Good afternoon on this Tuesday, September 4th, and thank you for tuning in to the latest tropical weather outlook from 28storms.com and the Hurricane Tracker app. There are currently 3 features in the Atlantic Basin that we are keeping tabs on. Of course, the main one is Tropical Storm Leslie, situated to the southeast of Bermuda, but we also have newly classified Tropical Storm Michael, and Michael is the 3rd earliest M-named storm to develop in recorded history, and this is only behind 2005 and 2011. So we are certainly enduring a very active hurricane season, but thankfully there have been no major hurricanes to worry about just yet. And third and finally, we do have the partial remnants of Hurricane Isaac situated across Alabama and Georgia, and some of the models are indicating that a broad area of low pressure will form from the northern Gulf Coast and work its way toward the south out across the open waters. Michael is of course no threat to land, so we're going to start off with the latest on Leslie. As of the 11 a.m. advisory from the Hurricane Center, maximum sustained winds are still only 65 miles per hour. It's barely moving to the north at 3 miles per hour, and it's forecast to make its closest approach to the island of Bermuda sometime during the early morning hours of Sunday, more than likely as a borderline Category 1 or Category 2 hurricane. The Hurricane Center's intensity forecast is also in very good agreement with the model consensus. As you can see here, by day 5 or around next Sunday, many of the models are showing a mid to upper end Category 1. There is still some track disagreement between the models, but within the first 72 to 96 hours, there is a fairly good amount of agreement, and it looks as though the center will likely pass over or just to the west of Bermuda. And even if that center were to pass to the west, this is a fairly large storm, so at the very least you can expect tropical storm force winds, if not potentially even hurricane force winds, and I do think that hurricane watches or warnings will eventually have to be issued for the island. For interests out across New England and Atlantic Canada, this is still a storm for everyone to keep a very close watch on, especially if you live in Nova Scotia or Newfoundland, and this is a look at the 12Z run of the GFS ensemble members. The good news for the United States is it looks rather unlikely that there will be any direct impacts, although we will be seeing an increase in significant wave heights from Florida to Maine. But as far as a direct threat, it looks as though Nova Scotia, and especially Newfoundland, has the best chance of being impacted directly by Leslie, if not by a full tropical cyclone, then perhaps by one that is making a transition toward becoming non-tropical. For the past week, we have stated that Leslie would likely become nearly stationary, as the first trough bypasses the storm to the east, and a ridge will temporarily build in directly north of Leslie, and we can see this ridge slowly coming in from the mid-Atlantic coastline, and this is going to be to the north of Leslie over the next 48 to 72 hours. But thereafter, we're going to see an increase in troughing out across the eastern United States and Canada, and this is going to be what finally turns Leslie to the north, and it's going to gain a lot of speed as it starts to move off in the general direction of the Atlantic Canada provinces. The synoptic pattern has been modeled fairly well by the ECMWF, and you can see initially we have that trough lifting out toward the northeast. We've got the temporary ridge building to the north of Leslie, and that is going to be the trend over the next 24 and 48 hours, so we are not expecting much in the way of any forward motion by the storm. But as we work our way into day 3 and day 4, we've got an amplifying trough near the Great Lakes, and although the ridging is trying to build back into the northeast of Bermuda, the combination of the storm being located on the western end of the ridge and just to the east of the main trough axis is going to allow the storm to quickly start moving to the north by next Sunday morning. And as we work our way into Monday, it is now fully captured by the trough, which is fairly strong here out across eastern Canada. So as we go into Monday and especially Tuesday morning, we should be feeling the effects of Leslie as it starts to make a transition toward becoming extra tropical as it moves directly over Newfoundland. Now also consider that this is a 7-day forecast, and the exact positioning of the trough can make all the difference as to whether or not Leslie moves a little bit more toward the west. So if you are currently in Nova Scotia, you're also advised to keep a very close watch on this storm. Also, as we mentioned just a moment ago, those significant wave heights will be increasing across much of the western Atlantic, since this is a fairly slow-moving and large storm. And as we go into 72 hours, you can see that the maximum significant wave heights are going to be expanding in all directions. And finally, as we go into Saturday night and Sunday morning, this is around the time that the maximum wave heights are expected to be near their peak as it approaches Bermuda, and we're talking about wave heights in excess of about 35 to 40 feet near the island. and the maximum radius of significant wave heights is only going to increase. And you can see here out across the Mid-Atlantic and New England states, it's only going to increase as well. And the same can be said for the Atlantic provinces of Canada as we go into days 5 through 7. And finally, we are going to take a very quick look at the Gulf of Mexico, as we do have a mesoscale convective complex in association with the partial remnants of Isaac swinging out of southern Alabama and the Florida Panhandle. And some of these remnants are likely to make their way into the eastern Gulf within the next 24 to 36 hours. And in rare cases, convective flare-ups like this one have gone on to generate tropical cyclones in the Gulf of Mexico. So we will be monitoring this area closely. However, we do have an upper level low situated near the southern half of the Florida Peninsula, and this is helping to induce a lot of moderate northerly wind shear across the eastern Gulf. And as we talked about with Leslie, there's likely going to be a lot of troughing out across the eastern United States over the next week or so, and that should help keep the conditions only marginally favorable at best for any type of redevelopment. And anything that does try to reform is going to be recurved back toward Florida with a lot of that southwest flow ahead of the trough. Finally, this is a look at the 850 millibar theta E forecast from the GFS model, and you can see a broad area of low pressure trying to get its act together to the south of Mobile, but a cold front will rapidly sweep across the central and eastern Gulf as we head into the latter half of this upcoming weekend, and that is going to push all of this activity quickly through the state of Florida, and we will likely not see any redevelopment from this feature, but once again we will keep an eye on it for all of our interest in the eastern Gulf. So that's all for now. For more frequent updates, go ahead and follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/28storms. And of course, we're also on Facebook. You can find us at facebook.com/28storms for more updates on the Isaac aftermath, along with some of the other information that we have alluded to in this video.